Head of Security Council describes the situation in Yemen as terrifying and blames Houthi rebels for blocking peace. Houthi militia continues targeting civilian houses in different parts of Hodeidah. Houthi rebels intensify war against public service workers and state institutions. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fouad. The head of the UN Security Council this month, Geraldine Byrne-Nason, said that major obstacles prevented a ceasefire agreement in Yemen. The UN official expressed her concern about this stumbling block in Yemen in an interview with the Al-Arabi Al-Jadid newspaper. Geraldine also expressed the international community's concern over the developments in Ma'rib. According to Geraldine, limited progress has been made, despite witnessing ups and downs. The UN official assured on the need to be optimistic to end the war. Alternatively, she stressed that a solution must be found to end the conflict. The world awaits the new UN envoy, whose mandate will be to find the swift path to peace where no obvious one exists. The path is more likely to be a long, hard slog that requires a renewed focus on laying the groundwork for sustainable peace. The following report looks into the potential challenges awaiting Hans Grunberg's mission.
With the appointment of a new UN Special Envoy to Yemen, peace seems as elusive as ever. 6.5 years after Houthi rebels pushed the government out of the capital Sana'a, one of the worst humanitarian crises has left thousands displaced and dead, many from lack of food and medical care. This recent move in international political will and the Omani intervention seem to put more pressure on Houthis to bring them to the negotiating table. The new envoy's team will therefore inherit a seemingly intractable situation. They may be able to reinterpret their mandate in ways that open up new moves, but rearranging the puzzle pieces sufficiently to enable a quick deal seems unlikely. Omani action and international political will are not the only factors that have changed in the past year. The overall context in Yemen has shifted. The Houthi rebels ramped up their fight in Ma'rib and increased their missile and drone attacks on Saudi territory. Against this backdrop, Saudi Arabia has offered major concessions such as easing restrictions on Hodeidah port and opening Sana'a airport to some destinations. Yet, the Houthis haven't budged, perhaps aiming to leverage the international community's obvious desire for a quick deal into further gains at little cost to themselves. For example, they have framed the port and airport issues as humanitarian matters in order to separate them from the ceasefire discussions, arguing that they should not have to concede much, if anything, to get those facilities open. Amid this stalemate, Oman sent a delegation to meet with the Houthis in Sana'a, an unusual move because Muscat typically serves as a facilitator but deliberately avoids being a mediator. Why have the Omanis suddenly embraced shuttle diplomacy, a style more often associated with Kuwait? More likely, they have concluded that the war will eventually threaten their national security more directly. Whatever spurred in the Omani trip, it didn't result in a deal. This was unsurprising. Negotiators have often complained that deals made with the Houthis in Muscat tend to get curbed in Sana'a. The worst effects are rooted in the country's economic situation, particularly its currency crisis and lack of salaries. Although food is available on grocery store shelves, most Yemenis are unable to afford it, and services remain poor or non-existent because the government is unable to fully operate inside the country. Meanwhile, the Houthi militia offensive in Ma'rib is raising fears for a refugee crisis. The world awaits the new envoy whose mandate will be able to find a swift path to peace where no obvious one exists. The path is more likely to be a long, hard slog that requires a renewed focus on laying the groundwork for sustainable peace.
In Hodeidah, Houthi militia targeted civilian objects in separate areas using heavier artillery weapons. Local sources indicated that the militia launched a number of heavy artillery shells toward civilians' population gatherings into Haita. Meanwhile, the militia targeted residential villages in Al-Jabaliyya using machine guns and snipers. In the same context, in Al-Faza, citizens' farms were subjected to intensive and deliberate targeting by Houthi elements, which prompted the farmers to leave them and flee. In Taiz, neighborhoods north of the city were subjected to Houthi bombing. Local sources indicated that a number of Houthi shells fell on residential neighborhoods in Usaifra, north of the city. Houthi crimes does not end as employees cannot get their salaries nor anything in return for their efforts. The same applies to the retired people, as they do not deserve any pensions, which leave the citizens in a difficult situation. This report sheds light on Houthi crimes against retired employees.
The series of Houthi crimes against retirees does not end. In a new episode, the so-called Minister of Civil Service and Insurance in the militia government, Salim al-Mughallas, issued directives to disperse the sum of 70 million rialis from the General Authority for Insurance and Pensions. On the other hand, the Syndicate of Retirees issued a statement condemning and denouncing the measure, which is described as being in violation of the Retirement Law 2526 of 1991 and its executive regulations, as the first official to dare to withdraw the retired and insured funds from the employees, especially since these amounts are deducted from their monthly wages. This council had issued a circular to the mayor of the capital, governors, head of bodies, institutions, public companies, and government departments at the end of last June regarding the retirement of more than 100,000 employees in implementation of the directives of the militia. During the months of May and July of 2018, the Houthi militia looted about 30 billion Yemeni rialis from the General Authority for Insurance and Pensions Fund and transferred it to what's called the war effort to add these sums to the 2 trillion Yemeni rialis of looted funds that were deposited at the side of the central bank in Sana'a in the name of the Authority General Insurance and Pensions. Observers confirmed that 140,000 civil and military employees who receive pensions have not received their monthly pensions since the year 2017, and their rights are looted in their eyes and in the eyes of the World Bank, while their contributions to building the state during their long years of service and the diseases they suffer from were not taken into account. Constant pain or suffering of orphans and widows who leave them, so that the Houthis confirm that they are a disaster of all segments and groups of society.
Being a public servant in Yemen is equal to hell. Many public servants opted to the private sector to earn their livings to support their families. They dream of the return of these days when they did not bear that in mind, with their salaries paid on time. More on this is within the following report.
Being a public servant in Yemen is equal to hell. The civil servants, since Houthis militia incursion and control of the capital Sana'a in 2014, are suffering more and more from the cut-off or disrupted salaries and Houthis' layoff policies. Many public servants opted to the private sector to earn their livings to support their families. They dream of the return of these days when they didn't bear that in mind, with their salaries paid on time. Now, after the Houthis' control, they are striving harder and harder to earn their day-to-day living. What they want now is to work anything, even the humble jobs they will accept to get the least of life. The public servants are now looking for the basic needs. Their families are bearing the brunt with them. The war in Yemen and the Houthi militia's practices obliged them to lead a harsh life that is void of all the joys of life. According to experts, more than half of Yemeni employees in the capital Sana'a and in other parts of the country that is still under the Houthi control have not been paid their salaries since 2016. Some experts say that this disruption of salaries is due to the relocation of the central bank from the main capital to Aden. Others say not. The relocation had nothing to do with the salary crisis. They blame the Houthis for this after the militias seized the monetary reserves for the state with nearly $5 billion. According to experts, the Houthi rebels took over the Yemeni oil customs returns that were booked in the central bank under supervision from the United Nations. The state lost all this money that could pay the employees their salaries. The difficult thing for these public servants is that they depend on the salary as a sole income. Now, with the salary cut off, they are forced to get through life with the most humble or even humiliating ways.
Government forces backed by the resistance carried out a tight ambush targeting members of the Houthi militia in Rahaba front southwest of Ma'rib. A military source said that the ambush resulted in killing 4 members of the Iranian militia. The militia suffered losses with at least 50 dead and dozens wounded, which made it respond by targeting civilians and bombing villages in the district with missiles and drones. It is reported by the Ministry of Defense that since last February, thousands of the militia elements died in Ma'rib clashes. In El Jawf, clashes have intensified in different fronts across the city. Shahla front was subjected to a Houthi escalation through which the Iran-backed militia tried to infiltrate the positions of the government forces. Military sources said that more than 20 elements were killed in the battles while the rest fled. Coming next. Prolonged power cuts aggravate people's lives and turn Aden into the capital of ghosts.
ثالثتي على منطقة الروضة استهدف الأطفال الأبرياء اللي يلعبوا في الشارع بيدعي للسلام يقولوا للسلام يقتل أطفالنا يقتل أطفالنا الأبرياء.
أنا قلت استجبت لأقول معي يقع واحد صاروخ ثاني طلعت البيت حقنا جالس أنا ألعب أنا وأصحابي والصاروخ انطرح.
Welcome back. In Taiz, people went out in a protest to stand with the Al-Harik family, which was subjected to abuse and killing by elements believed to belong to the army. Protesters demanded the arrest of all the murderers who participated in the crime against the family members. Also provide security to the life of the family, which is still facing threats. The border security captured a disused individual to be known as a Houthi leader trying to cross the border from Oman to Yemen through Shahin port. Security sources confirmed that the Houthi leader Hassan Ali Yahya al-Ahmad was returning in disuse from Iran through the land port in Shahin in al-Mahra. Al-Ahmad is one of the most dangerous leaders of the Houthi militia. His father Yahya al-Ahmad is considered one of the most important founders of the Houthi movement and the Iranian project in Yemen. Since the date of its liberation from the militia, people of Aden suffer from lack of basic services, one of which is the constant power outage that lasts for several hours in a single day. The following report sheds light on the electric sector issues and its outcomes over the citizens.
After being liberated from the Houthi militia, children of Aden were dreaming of something beautiful that would flick off the destruction dust and restore life back to normal. But that was in vain and remained elusive. The temporary capital Aden, whose its citizens have always dreamed of seeing light again, despite the lack of basic services.
We complain about the constant power cuts, especially in the summer where temperatures are high. Now during summer, the city of Aden is suffering from severe rise in temperature and people are suffering and need electricity. There are those who are sick, as well as food products that cannot be stored in high temperature. People are in dire need of electricity, especially in the summer.
Few days after the officials in Aden Electricity Corporation announced that the fuel allocated to the stations had run out and that they had gone out of service after sending several letters and appeals to the government that did not provide any response yet. Aden went into complete darkness with the worst and longest hours of complete power outage.
So far, 7 hours have passed and the electricity is still completely cut off. The weather is so hot that I cannot sit inside the store. I have to stay outside until a customer comes and enters the store. This is very tiring.
A tragic situation for the citizens of Aden due to the deterioration of the electricity service, considering the high temperature, which aggravate their suffering, especially patients with heart diseases, diabetes and pressure.
Electricity has been cut off for 7 hours so far and we cannot bear it, especially the elderly who suffer from chronic disease such as diabetes. Electricity is also causes damage to goods including the grocery. As you can see now, people in the streets are lying on the ground and most of them are elderly because the electricity has been out. Elderly people with the chronic disease such as a heart disease cannot sit at home because of the heat and power outage. Some of them sleep on the street and some go to the hotels. There are the poor class of people who cannot afford to buy private generators due to its high costs or solar panels that cannot last for more than 10 hours. People are tired.
Anger is raised, voices are getting louder, and appeals continue over the constant power cuts, in spite of the government's ignorance to provide basic services that should be available across the country.
The National Committee Against Coronavirus announced the registration of 38 new cases of the epidemic in 5 governorates. Committee officials said on Twitter that 28 cases were recorded in Hadramaut, 6 in Aden, 3 in Taiz, 1 in Ma'rib and 1 in Shabwa. Also 6 deaths were documented, 5 in Hadramaut and 1 in Ma'rib, plus 24 recovered cases. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 1,056, including 1,519 deaths and 4,961 cases of recovery. In the same context, the isolation center at El Sadaqa Hospital in Aden received 140 liters of oxygen cylinders to confront the third wave of COVID-19. Director General of the National Drug Supply Program at the Ministry of Health said that this support is to raise the efficiency of the centers to confront the third wave of the pandemic. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Head of Security Council describes the situation in Yemen as terrifying and blames Houthi rebels for blocking peace. Houthi militia continues targeting civilian houses in different parts of Hodeidah. Houthi rebels intensify war against public service workers and state institutions. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.